I have to say it. I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. What?
How could you not predict at least 10 to 13 wins for next season is all I'm saying. But again,
Jesus Christ, 13 wins.
I said
you want an opportunity to play, and the Jets are giving me an opportunity to play.
I'm sorry. I just remember that you compared Gesicki to Kelsey. I'm sorry.
I did not. You know what?
About it, I am ready to get hurt again.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another off-season episode of the Battered Fins Fans podcast. I am your host, the Bearded Fanatic. That is my co-host, the Battered Jets fan himself, Daniel G. And Danny, how the hell are you doing on this Monday night?
I'm pretty good, sir.
Well, that's good to hear.
Rough weekend. But
I was about to say, for you to come off and say you're pretty good, man, I don't know. You've had a couple of bad things go your way in the sports world this time. And for people who don't know, my boy here literally is a fan of, if I'm not mistaken, 7 to 8 different teams as far as the world of sports.
Yeah, if you include the whole world, yeah, but no, it's just five major sports teams, 5 major sports, and yeah, it's been a rough weekend, but moving along, sir, moving along.
When it comes to heartbreak, Danny definitely knows 1 or 2 things about heartbreak because he loves so many teams. For me, I keep my pain to one sole team for all season, and then I have 6 months where I don't feel any pain. You know how good that feels? Obviously, you don't know how good that feels.
I don't.
Because you have
I'm hurting 12 months round. Yeah.
You are the epitome of a battered fan because of how many teams you have. But ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about the quarterback room, more in particular, the backup quarterback position that's needed for your Miami Dolphins. And Danny, when we were talking about topics to bring up for this week, I thought this is one of the most important ones because outside of having Skylar Thompson, which I'm not going to say he was injury plagued. Yeah, he got hurt, but for the most part, it was just his I don't know what you want to round it off to. Maybe his inexperience is what hurt him most from being a viable backup to Tua Tagovailoa. So when we got together and we said, all right, what's going to be this show's week? I thought this is probably the more pressing one as far as topics that we should get to this offseason.
Well, my question is, are you sold on having Tua? I know that my understanding is that they already confirmed that going into next year, Tua has already said he's going to be the starter.
That is correct.
Do you feel confident that?
I do. Like I told you, I think it was like episode 14 or 15. When you asked me, you're like, all right, at this point in stage, would you take Herbert if you still could, or would you take Tua? And I told you, man, I'm sold on Tua. I'm sold on what Tua has shown me when he is available and on the field. I think
that's the issue, though.
Right. That's the key term. That when he is available and on the field, I'll take him shot for shot against any quarterback in the NFL. But then that's why the backup quarterback conversation is so important, because if and when he is not available, you can't miss a step. Like, you can't be like, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have none. You know, that old Bill Parcells basically call. But I think you need a viable quarterback to your starting quarterback. Like, even Chad Henne made some plays in this playoff run when Mahomes went down in the playoffs. And I'm not saying that we need Chad Henne back in the room. What I'm saying is you have somebody that in your quarterback room that can do something in case your star quarterback goes down. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I have 3 interesting names. I know that you have a couple of names that you want to throw at me. So by all means, if you're ready, I'm ready to jump into this.
I am ready. Just before we get started on the names.
Yeah.
Are we basically saying Skylar Thompson is automatically the 3rd string quarterback? No disrespect to him. I'm just saying. Okay, and I agree he has to be the 3rd string because I feel like with the Super Bowl contender that I feel like you guys could be. I feel like you guys have the roster for that if you could stay healthy. I don't think Skylar Thompson is a backup quarterback for a team that's ready for a Super Bowl run.
You never know. Like, he could go into this offseason and prep harder than ever, work on his body, like literally put in offseason work that he becomes the viable number 2. But as of what we've seen up till now, I don't believe that he's a viable number 2 to Tua Tagovailoa, and that's what we're talking about, these 3 options. Now, let me preface these 3 options that I'm going with. That I'm going to start from my 3rd to my 1st choice, right? And then more so, these options that I'm throwing at you guys, I don't think any of these guys, maybe one, could push Tua to be the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Now, the reason I'm not going the route of bringing somebody to push Tua for the starting quarterback position is because I believe in Tua, and I think Tua should be the starting quarterback next year. There shouldn't be any doubt about it. But I do want a security blanket in the off chance that he does go down again next season. So if you're ready, I'm ready, and I'm ready to drop the first name. So the first name I'm going to throw at you, he's a little bit younger. He's a little bit younger, right? But if I were to tell you in his career so far, he has 102 touchdowns and 64 interceptions, quarterback rating of 86.5. That's something you would be interested in as a backup quarterback?
As a backup quarterback, that sounds pretty good, yeah.
Right. So that first name is going to be Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is in a position that a lot of teams didn't want him. Yes, the Rams claimed him off of waivers, but who the hell did the Rams have?
Well, yeah, and at that point, they had already given up on the season.
Correct. So they were being like, hey, come in here and prove it. I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to go into next season and demand a huge contract. So we've seen scenarios where you're paying anywhere upwards between $7 to $12 million for a backup quarterback. I'm not saying
that's a high-end backup quarterback.
I'm not saying with the type of cap room we have, I'm not saying that you should probably go get it. This is why he's option number 3. I'm saying if it comes down to it and you enter free agency and we're already a few weeks away from free agency, I think that if you're in a position where a lot of teams aren't calling for him, my third option would be Baker Mayfield, because now you're putting him in a position where you bring him in here to basically compete if you want to for the number 1 spot. I don't want to. This is why it's option number 3. But he's young. I'm going to go on a limb and say he's proven, because to have a career percentage of 102 touchdowns and 64 interceptions, you've done a few things right in your career. And most of that time was with the Cleveland Browns. So I don't think to bring him in here to compete for the number 1 spot, but I think if he pushes Tua to that level where it makes Tua that much of a better quarterback, and then in the off chance, like I said, Tua goes down, I think Baker Mayfield is a solid backup option. What about you, Danny?
I like his experience. I like that when I think about a backup quarterback for specific teams, I feel like they need to be able to run the same offense that the starter did, right? Yeah. So you don't have too much change. Correct. And I think Baker Mayfield, for the most part, could run a similar offense to Tua. He can roll out. He can do the RPO. I like Baker Mayfield.
I think athletic-wise, I think they're about the same as well.
Right. They're not necessarily extremely fast, but they can move. They can get out of the pocket. I like Baker Mayfield as an option. I think that he's going to be looking for a starting job, though.
I agree.
Is he going to find it? No. The one thing that I think the Dolphins can sell Baker on, actually, they could sell any backup quarterback on, is if there's a backup quarterback and he's deciding between the Dolphins and another team. I mean, I don't mean to sound like rude or insensitive.
Say it.
But I mean, what other starting quarterback is more prone to injuries than Tua Tagovailoa? Like, if you're a backup quarterback behind Tua, there's a good chance that at some point you're going to get on the field, whether it be for a quarter or a game or 4 games. I feel like if you come to the Dolphins as a backup quarterback, there's a good chance that you might get some playing time. Whereas if you go somewhere behind an Aaron Rodgers, even though he's older, and these quarterbacks that just never miss time, like, it's different. Right. With Tua, you have a chance to play. So I think that's a great option. It's going to be expensive, though.
Yeah, and that's why it's option number 3, guys. And to Danny's note, he's not preaching any ill will towards Tua. He's not saying that he wants him to get injured.
I want to see Tua get out.
But based off of his career so far, he has not played yet a full season. That's all. This is going based off the fact of availability, and that if he were to go down, there has to be a viable quarterback position at number 2. So Baker Mayfield is my number 3 option. Danny, are you ready for number 2?
Go for it.
My number 2 option. Career stats here, guys. 38,000 passing yards, 244 touchdowns, 144 picks, 87
This person
points.
Is old.
This person is old. I'm going to go with Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton is my number 2 option. I know. It's not going to be a lot of people's favorite option. Here's why. He just had a season where he came in after Jameis Winston got hurt and threw for 18 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Now, granted, when you look at that team, you have Alvin Kamara, but you really don't have much of anything else on that offense.
Yeah.
We have weapons on this offense. So when I think Andy Dalton, I think veteran leadership. He has that. He has the ability to throw touchdowns. He just did it in New Orleans. And he knows how to run NFL offenses. I think that he would be a viable backup to Tua Tagovailoa. help him in the things that he hasn't learned yet. And in the off chance that he were to go down, he could come in and be a successful quarterback. Now, I'm comparing this to what we just had. I'm not saying there's better options out there. And by all means, in the comment section on Twitter, when we post this, you don't have to agree. Drop your 2 cents. Let me know how you feel. Let me know what quarterbacks you think we should bring in. But Danny, at my number 2 option, I bring in Andy Dalton.
To the point that I gave with Baker Mayfield, I feel like you should have a backup that could run the same system.
Yep.
Andy Dalton is kind of like a Joe Flacco. He's a statue back there.
Yeah.
He's not going to be running out of the pocket. Yes, he's experienced. I wouldn't say it's a bad option because, like you said, with his experience, you'll have a solid quarterback back there.
Yep.
But I'm not sold on bringing Andy Dalton as a backup.
And it's not a thing that I think it's because of his performance. I'm going more, there has to be a veteran voice in that room. I think Andy Dalton, out of the crop that's available, I think Andy Dalton would be a good voice to have. That's just my 2 cents. He's not a bad locker room guy, and that's kind of why I picked him as my number 2 option.
But we have to take into consideration that based off of the past, whatever quarterback right now, these are all hypotheticals, obviously.
Right,
you have no
right.
say. But whatever quarterback you decide on or the Dolphins decide on, there's a good chance that he's going to be your starting quarterback at some point.
Yeah.
Do you really want Andy Dalton being the starter for the Miami Dolphins for 2 or 3 games this season?
Well, that's what I'm saying. For what he performed this year, he had a QBR of 95.2, 18 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. He performed well.
Would you rather Andy Dalton or Baker Mayfield as a starting quarterback for like 2 games?
For 2 games, I think I would take Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. So would I.
Baker Mayfield doesn't give Tua the same thing that an Andy Dalton can as far as veteran leadership.
So you're talking more about like on the sideline.
Correct. I think that he needs that veteran. Okay. You remember like when Ryan Tannehill came into the season, he had Matt Moore in his ear. And Matt Moore, by all means, wasn't a great quarterback, but he was a great locker room guy. Baker Mayfield is not a great locker room guy based off of everything we've heard up to this point.
Yeah.
I think Andy Dalton, we've heard more than enough that he is a good locker room guy. I think it would be beneficial to his career and the locker room if Andy Dalton was a backup quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Are you ready for my number 1 option?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see if it's mine.
Shout out to my boy Chris. You're gonna love this one, sir. Career stats, sir. This guy.
I know who it is.
This guy.
I know who it is.
Has thrown for 44 touchdowns and only 15 interceptions. So pretty young guy, right? He played on a horrendous team, Danny. And
I know. Does he have an awesome mustache also?
He does have an awesome mustache. In that rookie season, Danny, if I told you that a gentleman by the name of Gardner Minshew would throw 21 touchdowns and 6 interceptions and have a quarterback rating of 91.2, would you take that when he basically was playing on a horrendous Jaguars team?
I would. And you know what? And to this day, I still believe that in 2019, they benched him because they thought that if he played, they might win a game. And they needed to get Trevor Lawrence because there was absolutely no reason to bench him.
No,
and he got benched.
At that point, he had 16 touchdowns and 5 interceptions.
Yeah, and they benched him.
By no means did he need to get benched.
No, but they needed Trevor Lawrence, which obviously worked out for them in the long run. But I was like, come on, man, how are you going to bench Gardner Minshew because they don't want to win games? That was blatant. Just yes, Gardner Minshew, I like it.
So Gardner Minshew is my number 1 option as a backup quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Now you ask yourself, if Baker Mayfield is out there looking for a starting quarterback position, you would assume Gardner Minshew is the same because just based off of what he's done so far in his career, let's go ahead and go through the numbers. 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, rookie season. 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions before he gets benched. Philadelphia, when he played his first year there, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. This year, 3-3. Now, playing behind Jalen Hurts.
Do you remember this year? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the only time he started was that Dallas game. He put up like 1 billion points that game. They lost because the Cowboys outscored him, but the Cowboys could not stop him.
Yeah, no, again, he looked rough at times during that game, and I remember texting Chris, like, yo, your boy's really not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And shout out to Chris Duran again, your co-host on the Inter Miami show, the Battered Herons. He himself is a huge Gardner Minshew fan. Guys, he even goes on a limb to say he prefers him over Dak Prescott. However you believe about that, that's literally on you. But Danny, going back to the viable number 2, he's shown me enough in his career that I think he could come to Miami, compete for that number 1 spot. And again, not what I want, but I think he's the only viable one on my list so far. They could probably push Tua for that number 1 spot because he's shown it before. He's shown that he can win games, even with not a lot of talent around him. The Dolphins are filled with talent right now on the offensive side of the ball. I think he'd be a viable number 2 in Miami. If Tua does miss games, I think he has plenty in him to win us some games. Danny, that is my number 1 option. How do you feel about him?
I like him. Going back to what you said about Andy Dalton, though, he doesn't give you that sideline veteran for Tua.
Yep.
I think Gardner Minshew would be trying to become a starter. I think he feels like he hasn't had the opportunity to become a starter.
Facts.
Baker Mayfield, on the other hand, has failed as a starter. He might accept that backup role a little more because he's already had his chance. Gardner Minshew, I feel like he hasn't had his chance, so he kind of wants to get out there. But yeah, I like it. I like the 3 names. Andy Dalton to me would be the 3rd option out of those 3.
Okay.
But I like Gardner Minshew. I like Baker Mayfield. Mayfield to me would be.
So your options, as far as my list, would be Gardner Minshew, Baker Mayfield, Andy Dalton. That would be your list if you were picking a backup for the Miami Dolphins.
If I was picking out of your list, yes. But there are 2 names that I think I would prefer more than these 3.
And before we get to that, again, ladies and gentlemen, in the comment section on Twitter, at me, drop me your 2 cents. Again, this is just what I feel would be a good quarterback room to support Tua Tagovailoa as our starter. But Danny, hit me with your 2 wild cards. That, by the way, this is off the record. I have no idea what he's about to drop at me, so let's see what he's got to say.
All right, so I had 3, right? Baker Mayfield was my number 2. Okay. So I had a 1, a 2, and a 3. Baker Mayfield was my number 2. I thought Baker Mayfield would be great. I think he can run the same offense that Tua does. He's accurate. I like Baker Mayfield with his experience and all that.
Okay.
My number 3, which might not become available because I believe he's a restricted free agent.
Okay.
Is Tyler Huntley.
Ooh, okay.
Right? He isn't the best.
No.
But he can win you some games.
Okay.
He's proven that with the Ravens this year. He's mobile.
Yes.
So you can run those RPOs.
Yeah.
And all you need him is to hit those quick dump offs and whatnot for 2 or 3 games and let Tyreek and Waddle and all do the rest. I think that would be a great backup option for 1 or 2 games. Now, if you need him for a full season, you might be out of luck. But I think for 1 or 2 games, he can come in and do the job. So Tyler Huntley for me is the 3rd option. Again, I don't know if he's a restricted free agent, though. I don't know if that's going to be an option.
Okay, so
number 2 for me.
Before you drop me that one, I prefer Andy Dalton over Tyler Huntley. That's just me. I'm not going to get too into it. Danny knows my feelings about athletic quarterbacks and that their primary role is their legs. I prefer a person who has to rely on their arms and has their legs as an out. So for me, Tyler Huntley, I would not pick.
But those type of quarterbacks help you win games.
I agree.
With their legs. And again, you're only thinking for 1 or 2 games.
Right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying if I had to pick, I'd pick Andy Dalton before. And I know that sounds blasphemous. I know I'm going to get killed for that. But I'd pick Andy Dalton before I pick Tyler Huntley. But go ahead. Hit me with your other one.
So I got Tyler Huntley, number 3. Baker Mayfield, number 2. And number 1, the person that I think that you guys should, without a doubt, go after and have as your backup quarterback when you consider the fact that he'll probably play 3 to 4 games. I think your backup quarterback should be Sam Darnold.
Ooh.
Sam Darnold is mobile with his legs.
Okay.
Sam Darnold is an accurate passer. And what Mike McDaniel did with Tua, he can do with Sam Darnold. Remember, Sam Darnold only played a handful of games in college as a starter.
Yeah.
Like, he hasn't been well developed. He has the skill set in him. I think Mike McDaniel could do wonders with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold didn't play much last year because of Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
He played 6 games, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He was 60% completion percentage, not that great. But Sam Darnold, maybe not a starter, but as a backup, I think Sam Darnold would be a great backup.
It makes
sense.
I think
he would be an expensive backup, but I think that in the NFL, you guys might be the team that wants to spend the most money on their backup quarterback because it might be the most important position for you guys at some point because Tua might go down for a couple games, as we've seen in the past. So I think Sam Darnold will be a great backup option for the Miami Dolphins.
I like that option. I like your 1. I like your 2. I don't like your 3. You know, at this point, I'm going to say another blasphemous thing. I think I prefer Josh Rosen before I get Tyler Huntley involved.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I know.
Isn't Tyler Huntley a Pro Bowler this year?
I'm being very disrespectful now. I get it, but you know, I would take Lamar Jackson in a heartbeat, obviously. But we're not talking about starting caliber quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about just I'll take Cam Newton right now over Tyler Huntley. That's just another name that I'm not saying I'm throwing it out there. I'm just saying if you're saying Tyler Huntley or this, I would take Cam Newton. But that's just another one. I actually like Sam Darnold a lot. But I do think that he's going to be up there as far as getting paid, as far as the Baker Mayfields of the world, that if you want to bring him in, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. But
I think it's worth it for you guys, honestly.
Yep.
How sad is it, though, that the top 2 quarterbacks taken in 2018 are now being talked about as the best backups in the league, possibly?
Yeah, man.
And then, 3 out of the top 4, Josh Rosen isn't even in the league anymore? That was a horrible year to draft quarterbacks.
It's
Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were the only good ones.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how quickly things could change in the NFL. But, ladies and gentlemen, this was the Batter Fins fans offseason episode talking backup quarterbacks. We're going to be dropping this on YouTube. As always, make sure you let me know in the comments how you feel about this episode, how you feel about our choices. And by the way, Danny, before we sign out, there's something I had to read to you. I thought it was so blasphemous. I'm not going to put him on blast, but I am going to read his comment. I needed to read this to you. And I kind of wanted to know how you felt about it real quick before we sign off. Listen, congratulations to Vic Fangio. It's finally official that he is going to be the defensive coordinator for our Miami Dolphins, or my Miami Dolphins, and the rest of our listeners. But on our last episode, obviously we talked about what he's going to bring to the table, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And somebody went and dropped this comment. Let me know what you feel about this. Welcome to Miami, Vic. Hope you enjoy coaching second and third string defenders, because that's all we seem to be able to put on the field these days. You may just want to have an escape hatch clause in your contract, just saying. I haven't liked or thumbs up that comment because I felt that was so disrespectful, because I think my defense has played at times. Like if we had second and third string
maybe
players
they mean it in the aspect of your players all got injured.
Maybe that's what he meant. But I didn't take it as that when I first read it. I took it as he was taking a shot at our players.
I don't think he meant it at that.
So I just wanted to throw that one out there. Vic Fangio, I'm so happy you're here. I think you're going to do great things for this defense. I think you're going to do great things for Mike McDaniel to grow as a coach. I think your veteran voice is going to be great for this team, just like what I want in my backup quarterback. We need that veteran voice in that quarterback room. Danny, anything else before we sign out?
No, sir. I'd love to see Sam Darnold be on the Dolphins and then play you guys all the way to the Super Bowl so I can just hate my life just a little bit more.
Ooh, that would be sweet. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this was another offseason episode of the Batter Fins Fan Show. Hope you liked it. Drop your comments. Let me know how you feel about my options, and I'll check you guys out next week. Peace.